Kind of, I think the audience has been putting up some questions, so I'm going to shift to that. I have it on my iPad, it's on the screen behind. I think one of the questions that's received a lot of votes is, how do you keep reinventing yourself? And I know you've been through multiple things. You started your career in India, you went and studied US, did consulting, worked in corporate, became a CEO, and now you're on multiple boards. So how do you keep reinventing yourself? And the second part of that is, how are you looking at the next chapter? Is it corporate boards? Is it beyond that? And what are your plans for that?
Look, reinvention. Lifelong learning is perhaps the most important skill that all of us have to sort of practice through our lives, because the world is changing so much around us. In the past, it used to be once you graduate from university, learning was over. It's exactly the opposite. We have to keep learning, otherwise we atrophy. Because everybody else is going to be so much better than us, we're going to become absolutely irrelevant. So, I read everything I can lay my hands on. And for example, this morning I was up around 2:30 or something, and I was still jet lagged. And somebody sent me a fascinating report on a particular topic I'm working on. I finished the report, and then there were 130 footnotes. And at least 15 of those footnotes had reports that, would take me into even more interesting places. Okay, so if you're not willing to do this, why is this trend happening? Why is this information important? Keep asking those whys and constantly zoom out and zoom in. How does this fit into an overall scope of work? Or how does it fit into an overall environment? Then go into detail. Keep doing this, zooming in, zooming out, and asking the why, being incredibly curious. If you don't do that, you will become irrelevant. Don't read something superficially and then say, I've done my reading. Okay? I was reading about the tech companies, the FANGs, and then the big nine actually, the Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba, the big nine, and how that whole world is going to change. I wasn't happy with just that. So I read another book called The Big Four, which talked about Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Google and Apple. That was a good book. Then there was another book that's coming out in about 3 weeks. Somebody sent me the manuscript on the Evil Four. Okay, so, just because I read one book on the Big Nine doesn't mean I should read about the Big Four and the Evil Nine. I have a completely different perspective, good and bad, about all these companies. So I think you have to decide how to speed read, but dig deeper, dig for different perspectives, read articles, just keep going, because somewhere you'll find a nugget which you could use in some event that you show up in, which shows that you think of yourself and your knowledge base very differently than just showing up at work, just doing the work and going back. But it's an enormous commitment of time. Just remember that.
And your next chapter? Is anything beyond the boards and all of that? I know you're on some boards like the International Cricket Council, but is anything else beyond that? People have speculated about you're doing something with government.
So I teach up at the US Military Academy Investment. I teach that for 16 days of the year. I'm the co-chair of the Connecticut Economic Commission, so we are charged with bringing more business to Connecticut, so that takes a lot of my time. I do speeches around the world with the Speakers Bureau, about 8 or 10 speeches a year. I'm writing a book about how to help young women integrate work and family, and what needs to change in society. In the past, everything has been written about and said, make the checklists, or lean in or lean out, whatever it is. All of that are point solutions. If you bring it all together, it's a very complex picture, and a lot has to change from communities, government, families, society. A lot has to change. So I'm writing it for the US first, because it has to be country specific, and then we'll figure out which other countries will benefit from that book. And the goal is not just to write a book, the goal is to start a movement to say, if we want young people to have families, we have to, and we want them to work, we have to think about the integration of work and family differently. In fact, in Singapore, I read an article today that there were 78 young people for every 100 older person. That number has come down.
It is aging very rapidly.
Precipitously. I mean, the number is like 14 or 15 now, and it's a crisis of mammoth proportions in the Straits Times today. And I'm looking at that saying, if young people put off having kids longer and longer, And as you get older, you say, I don't want the kids at all. All of a sudden, somebody's got to worry about who's going to pay into the kitty to take care of the older people. And so I think people are doing that, but they just don't know how to integrate work and family. So this book is going to take on this difficult topic, and sometime in 2021 it will come out after the election cycle. So buy the book.
I don't think you need to tell people here in this room that I think it will be, I think people will be now asking.
Download it on Amazon. Just kidding. Buy the hardcover.
Okay. There's an interesting question which is slightly offbeat out here that's come from that. You're on the ICC board now, and it's, I know you like cricket, I know you formed a cricket team at your college, at your women's team. There are some stories about cricket that I will not go into, including, we won't go there, but I think, how is this whole experience of being on something like a sports thing? And I know Pepsi's been associated with ICC separately, but how is this whole, experience different from like working on a corporate board? It's a very different approach.
The ICC is the board which represents countries. So you've got the big guys, India, Australia, New Zealand, West Indies, South Africa, and Ireland. Then you've got two other guys that represent all the other countries, voted by them on the board. I'm the only one that doesn't have a country affiliation. So, and they're all men, I'm the only woman. So it helps because when the countries get together and start to fight about schedules or money, I can sit back and watch the guys go at it. And they all turn to me and say, so Indra, what do you think? More as an independent member, because I'm not going to get into the marketing market, I just tell them what I think it should be. So I'm learning a lot about how it is to be the mediator. And that's a new experience for me. And I'm also learning that cricket's an incredibly rich sport. There are 2 or 3 countries rule cricket. So we have to build the shoulders of the game. We have to get countries like the US playing cricket, because if a rich country like the United States does not play cricket, cricket will remain an India sport, maybe with Australia and England added on. But it's India really all the way. And it cannot be a one-country sport.
The aside on that is that it was difficult to get Indra out when she was batting.
Shut up now.
You'll have to ask me the reason why.
Why did you ask me to play? I was 10 years older than you. Why did you want me to play? So anyway, Suresh grew up in our home. So my brother and Suresh were in the same school in Don Bosco in Madras. And I didn't know we had only one brother. We thought we had 2 because Suresh lived in our home. I think his mother would assume that he was safe because he was in our house. And my mother would say at 9 o'clock at night, don't you have to go home? Didn't your parents worry about you? I literally push him home so that he'd at least sleep for the night and come back in the morning.
Okay, moving on a little bit, I think some of the questions that I think you have answered them. You often said women can't have it all. I think you addressed that. As you took on newer and more unfamiliar roles, can you highlight things that you did to establish credibility with your peers versus the bosses? Did you ever feel unprepared or like you're winging it? What's the advice that you have for people who have this kind of challenge?
You cannot be unprepared. You cannot be, because once they see through you, it's awful. In fact, I would argue you should be over-prepared. I always tell the story of in 2000 when I had to sign a capex. I was CFO and president at that time. I had to sign a capex for, I think, $1.5 billion for an ERP system. And there were 20 signatures. I was the 21st signature, and my boss was going to be the 22nd signature. I read the capex. I didn't understand everything of what it said. Long one. So I went to the person who was the 19th signatory and said, hey, what's the meaning of this capex? And he said, don't understand a word, but the tax calculations are right. Okay? I went to the 18th. He said, don't understand a word, but the accounting model is right. They've done all the right accounting calculations. So I kept moving up the chain, and the people who really knew what the capex was like signatory 1 through 6. That's dangerous because those are fairly junior people. So I'm just sitting here going, I have 2 choices. I can say I trust the 1 through 6, which is okay. But if I'm going to have the CEO sign the capex, I want to say to my boss, Steve Randall, you can sign the capex, or at least he thinks that if I signed it, he can take it to the bank. In this case, I cannot waive it. Instead, I went and bought textbooks that relate to the capex. And between Thanksgiving and New Year, I locked myself in my office, hired the professors who wrote the books to be on call, and I read every one of them cover to cover. Cover to cover. So when I came out on New Year, I was a walking expert on the ERP system. Oh my God, was I an expert. So I called my IT guys and I said, okay, can I get a picture of the as-is architecture so that I can understand the to-be, how it's going to look? So they decided they'd send me the as-is architecture. They sent me 4 binders of the as-is architecture. I said, okay, 2 can play this game. I went through every page of the book. Every other page I wrote a question. And I sent it back to them. I said, I'd like answers by the end of the week for all the questions. So now it was back on them. All right. So I didn't wing it. I did my work. It was a lot of work. But at the end of the day, they knew that they couldn't pull a fast one. That was the last time anybody could ever pull a fast one because it goes around the company like wildfire. And my strong advice is don't wing it. No more than anybody else in your shop knows, because in a different way. I mean, I may not be able to actually write the code, but I know how to ask the right questions so that I can draw the right results from it. So know more about that subject, but in a way that's different. And people will then have a ton more respect.
I think by now the audience knows exactly why she is, which is where she is.